Welcome to Up and Out Entrepreneurship Edition. We have a fun game for you today, but it also has a serious purpose. We designed Up and Out Entrepreneurship Edition for community leaders such as yourself who are working hard to help local entrepreneurs because you realize that as entrepreneurs succeed, your community prospers. While playing Up and Out, you're going to learn many different ways to help entrepreneurs. In the game, we call these improvement cards, and they include, for example, an angel investor network, revolving loan fund, youth entrepreneurship in the schools, and many others. But most importantly, Up and Out will spark a discussion with your fellow players about how to apply this to help entrepreneurs in your community. So let's get started learning the game. Calvin's standing by, and he's going to explain the components of the game.
Thanks, John. This game's got three main components. The first is money. You should have $60 in fake money in front of you at your team's board. The second component are resource tiles. Now you should start the game with 3 random resource tiles. Now on your board, you can see that there are 4 categories that correspond to the 4 colors of resource tiles. Now going down, we can see that the first one's red, which is networks. The second one's yellow, which is business climates. The next one's green, which is capital. And the last one's blue, which is workforce. The third and final component of the game are the improvement cards. Now looking at the top of the improvement card, we can see that this one is called Networks to Across. And the name of the card is Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Now, besides having the requirement that you have 2 network tiles, you also must have $20 in cash. After you play this card, you're going to get $5 in revenue for every turn for the rest of the game. On the very bottom of the card, we see the letters VP followed by a series of numbers. Now for this basic version of the game, we're only going to concern ourselves with the first number after VP, which in this case is 2. So what this means is once we have 2 network resource tiles and $20 in cash, we get $5 in revenue the rest of the game, and we get 2 victory points. Now the goal of the game is to get the most victory points. Now that I've told you about the 3 basic components of the game, Nick and I are going to go through one turn of the game to show you what the turn phases look like.
Now, Nick has joined us, and Calvin and he are going to demonstrate how to play Up and Out. I get to serve the role of the banker, so I'm going to control the money and the resource tiles. Now in the workshop, the banker is going to be in the front of the room, and each team is going to have a runner who goes to see the banker to pay for improvements. We'll explain that as we go along. Nick is taking the part of one team. Calvin's playing for another team in the game, and we're going to give them the same resource tiles. In the workshop, you'll draw them randomly, but to make it a little more manageable now, we're going to give them the same resource tiles. So let's start by looking at the setup. How do we set up the board for Up and Out? You notice both players have 3 resource tiles on the board. They also have their money, $60. To complete the setup, they each need to draw 1 card from each pile, from each category. So what have you got, Calvin?
I've got a local score chapter, a free high-speed wireless in all public buildings, a TIF district, and a team of experienced business people as advisors.
Okay, how about you, Nick?
I've got an Entrepreneur of the Year Award, Business Ready Development Sites, Micro Enterprise Loan Program, and Youth Entrepreneurship Camp.
Okay, that completes the game setup. Now we begin the first turn. You'll notice on your game board there's a diagram that shows the turn sequence. The first step is to draw one card from any category. So Calvin can choose any category from which to take a card. What are you going to draw, Calvin?
I'm going to pick networks because I have 2 networks tiles on the board already. It looks like I've drawn Entrepreneur Self-Support Organization, a networks 4 across, and it looks like I can't play that.
Okay. Calvin does not have a play. That's what I noticed. Nick, what are you going to draw?
So I'm going to draw a networks card because I already have 2 networks resource tiles. And it looks like I got office hours with successful entrepreneurs, which is a great pull.
Okay, very good. Now, the next step in the turn sequence is to either play, and you can play multiple cards, or you discard. You cannot do both. You play or you discard. What are you going to do, Calvin?
I'm going to discard because I don't have any plays I could make. So I'm going to get rid of 2 of my cards. 3 of my cards, actually. I'm going to get rid of my capital, 3 across, my workforce, 4 across, and I'm also going to get rid of my networks, 4 across. The reason I'm getting rid of these cards is because it'll take a long time before I'll be able to play any of these. So as you can see, I'm taking the cards I don't want and putting them on the bottom of each of their decks. Now I get to draw back the same amount of cards I just discarded from any category I want. Well, I've got these 2 networks tiles, so I'm going to draw all 3 of my new cards from networks. And it looks like I've got a Entrepreneur of the Year award, which I can play next turn, a entrepreneurship mentoring program, and office hours with successful entrepreneurs. Now I've discarded, so the next turn phase for me is to go see the banker. I don't have anything to show the banker because I don't have any plays I can make, but I still need to go see him because he's got something to give me.
And I do. So the runner comes up to me, and in this case, you don't have an improvement to pay for, but he does receive a resource tile. Randomly drawn, it's a green capital tile.
I take that tile back to my table and place it on the board. And that's the end of my turn.
Okay, Nick, let's continue with your turn. Are you going to play or discard?
Thanks, John. I actually am going to make 2 plays. So I have 2 resource openings under networks, and I happen to have two across improvements that I can make. So what I'm going to do is count out the amount of money that I need. So I need $20 for each improvement. And I'm going to bring my improvements and my money over to the banker.
Okay, the runner comes up to me as the banker. I'm going to check to make sure he's paying it correctly, and he is. I get to keep the money. However, he gets the improvements back now. He can place those on the board. And I'm also going to give him a randomly drawn tile, which is a capital.
Great. So I go back to my team, and we place the capital tile, and then I also get to put my investments underneath my resources.
Okay, very good. The next turn, at the end of the next turn, when Nick comes to see the banker, he'll receive revenue of $10, $5 for each of those improvements. And that is the end of turn 1. Both players have gone through the entire turn sequence. Nick, how many victory points do you have?
So from each of my 2 across investments, I have 2 victory points from each, so I have a total of 4 points.
Okay. You'll notice on your game board there is a diagram that shows the scoring. And for 2 across improvements, they're worth 2 victory points. Calvin, how many victory points do you have?
0. I haven't made any improvements yet.
Okay. So that finishes turn one. We would resume with the second turn and follow the same turn sequence. Begin by drawing one card from any category. Okay, now you should have a little flavor for how the game Up and Out Entrepreneurship Edition is played. Of course, the best way to learn is to get in there and play the game, and that's what you get to do now. Your facilitator will be available to answer questions as they arise during the gameplay. I do ask you to remember one thing as you're playing, and that is to take note of the different improvements. These are ideas that you might want to capture for your own community. So there's going to be time during the workshop for discussion of what your community is currently doing and the next steps to support entrepreneurs. So let's see how good you are at building a strong entrepreneurial support system. May the best team win.